Okay. Okay, today is Monday, June the 15th, 2020, at 5:05, I guess, 5:10 p.m. The boardroom of the Roxanne Administration Building, 801 North First Street. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Alemán Torres present.
Bertha Roda present.
Eva Orona present.
Hector Lopez present.
Oscar Lopez present. None with us at the moment is Richard Gonzalez, and we got Lori Garza on Zoom.
And Ms. Garza, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. And that's it.
I'm present virtually.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, no, well, let's have a moment of silence, please, and remember our dear ones, our loved ones, and the ones that have gone before us, and for all these people that are going through all these difficulties. Let God help them all. Also pray for Irma's mother that's very ill. Remember her in your prayers. Amen. We go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Hector.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Go item number 4, public participation, Irma.
None.
All right. We go to item 5, information on items, sir.
Sir, if it's okay with you, can we go to closed session, or would you like to go to information? It's up to you.
We go to close session now, so I need to entertain a motion that we go into executive session on the section 551, 174, and 551.75, I guess. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Move on Ms. Rolando, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Orona. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Unanimous? All right.
Okay, so Richard, we'll be in closed
Oscar,
session.
Monday.
Oscar, I'm gonna go ahead and hang up because I'm with my family in my car, so that's not appropriate for a closed session. But when you guys are out of closed session, I'm gonna call back.
All right, we'll bring you back. All right. Thank you very much.
Dr. Moreno, can you text me when it's safe for me to get back on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, and then you can just catch me up tomorrow, correct?
Yes, and there's just for
Okay.
you, so you'll know, we're gonna go over one item for closed, and then we're gonna come back to open, and then we'll come back to close again. For the
Okay,
rest of
and
it.
then at that time, I'll
Yes.
hang up again.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, sir.
thank you.
Let me know when I can call back.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Right. All right.
That's it? What about questions, what does that mean? Oh, that's just the contact. Let me just make sure the volume is right.
Are they doing Zoom? Is that what it was?
This is Teams.
Teams?
But now it's starting to expand, it's built on the platform now.
Okay.
The Summer Leadership Institute, June 24th through the 26th. That is online, and Irma will be providing you some additional information before you today, as far as the process. How many may be interested in continuing, in your continuing
Is there a
education?
fee, sir?
195,
Wow.
but you have 30 days to complete any of the sessions.
They're pre-recorded.
Unless you want to be part of the discussions, then you would have to listen to them that day of the conference.
Okay.
But other than that, you have 30 days to complete any sessions you would like.
All right. The next one is rescheduling of July 13th, 2020, because that's when we're coming straight back from the holiday, and normally every year, we'll put that next meeting to the following week, which would be July the 20th of 2020. Now, on budget workshop dates for 2020-2021 school year, today, trustees, we are, when we get to governance on Roman numeral 8, be discussing our budget, and basically, it's just to plant the seed with all of you, to show you the 2 samples that we have, show you some of the other documents that we can take that home with you for your review. But in order for us to really sit down and start rolling up our sleeves, looking at our budget, that'll be, I'd like to schedule a follow-up with you, preferably by next week, to come up with a date for next week so we can go ahead and begin our budget discussions. But today, like I said, we'll have 2 scenarios for you to review.
Okay.
All right? And then, so this will be EMA 1 that we need to decide tonight before we leave.
The
And then,
dates.
yes, ma'am.
Can we talk about it now?
Sure.
Okay.
You do that.
So next,
I know that Monday will not be a good day to have it, so maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday next week.
Thursday would work for me too. 25th.
Thursday is good for me as well. Anyone else? Mr. Lopez, Mr. Lopez?
I'm good.
Is that Thursday? Okay. So
And
the
then-
25th
Yes.
will be our next,
And Lori?
How about you, Lori?
Lori?
Ms. Garza?
I cannot on the 25th, because that's when I have my, Lone Star meeting. Are you talking about the 25th of July, right?
No, June.
June.
For a budget workshop.
June.
June.
Okay, yes, 25th is fine.
Okay. All right, so June 25th will be our official workshop day, board workshop day.
What time?
What time?
Do y'all still like the 5 o'clock? Or
Five.
Going later?
do you- a little bit
No,
earlier?
I can do earlier.
I'm up for earlier, it's up to y'all.
Me too. Earlier, it's fine with me earlier. Everybody, if you're,
I
you
should
work.
be off that day.
Lori?
Ms.
4:30?
Garza, if we wanted to do earlier than 5,
4?
4 o'clock?
I'm fine with earlier, just let me know.
4
4
4
o'clock?
o'clock is fine with me,
Awesome.
4 o'clock is fine, even 3 o'clock is fine.
And that.
Oh, you're agree.
Don't make it any earlier, please.
Okay,
Okay, 4 o'clock is fine.
4 p.m., okay.
Got it.
Got it, okay. It's
Good.
on my calendar.
all right, so June 25th at 4 p.m., okay?
Yeah.
All right, Nina, you wanna go over the list of bills?
Yes, sir. Good evening, board members, board president, and Dr. Moreno. The bills start on page 7 and end on page 19 for a total of $643,032.62. And as always, if any board member has any questions on the May bills or any previous bills, please send me an email or Dr. Moreno, and we'll be happy to address your needs right away.
All right.
All right, Ms. Conway, the financial statement report for the month of May 2020.
Yes, sir, the financial report starts on page 20. On page 22 is a synopsis of where we are as of May, the end of May. And if you go down the line, you can see every function is under 82% except for 52, which is police department and security. However, we don't plan on spending all of that $30,883. We did have some security at graduation, and we don't anticipate a lot more security by the end of the year. So we should be fine in that function as far as enough to close out the year. The second column is real scary. That is the food service department. As you can see, they've got a loss right now of $112,000. The reason for that loss is we're continuing to pay all of our staff. We also paid some premium pay for those that were working COVID-19, and we've not received near the revenue back in from the Texas Department of Agriculture. Usually your lunch and breakfast meal, you know, we end up with 200,000 or 300,000 at the end of the year. We're not going to this year because we're only feeding about 600 meals a day instead of 2,700. But everything I've heard is they're gonna make this right with us and we're not going to lose money. In the event that that doesn't happen, we do have a contract with Chartwells that they guaranteed us a savings at the end of the year. So it's alarming, but we should be able to make it right by the end of the year. And then the final column is 184, that's athletics. He's tracking equally as he did last year, which is the next page, 24, is a comparison of this year, May 2020, to last year, May 2019. And as you can see, we've generated $1.6 million in additional revenue. Most of that is House Bill 3. And we've only spent $500,000 of that above last year. So we've got about $1.1 million more cash in the bank than we did in May of last year. The page 25 is your taxes, property taxes. We've collected so far about 97% of the budget of what we budgeted for current year property taxes. Any questions on the financials so far? I have an extra. Starting on page 26, we're required quarterly to report our investments, at least quarterly. So we should have done this in April, but because of COVID, I pushed it off till this month. And basically what we're required to show you is how did we begin the month, and that's, the quarter, that's on page 27. So the book value at the end of November was $13 million. We spent $13.2 million, brought in $14.5 million. So we ended February 29th with $14.3 million in Lone Star, which is our investment pool. And the pages following that is just the detail from the pool of every single day where we added money or brought money down from Lone Star. Any questions on the financials?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Next item will be the business and support, number 7, sir.
Trustees, at this point, we'd like to request that you have the approval of our minutes and approval of budget amendments under consent agenda items.
Recommendation for staff that we approve the minutes and budget amendment as presented to the board. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Lopez, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Roldan, any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye, for you.
I don't know, ask her, you can ask.
Yeah, she said aye.
She said I.
Aye,
Okay.
all approved.
Unanimous? We go to, item, program number 7, business and support, sir.
Trustees, this evening we'd like to discuss and consider approval of special education renewal of the following contracts, and these are standard contracts that we utilize within our special education department for our students. The first one being the assessment, intervention, and management, Succeeded Software Services, diagnostic service through Maria Garcia. Number 4 is Accelerate Contract Therapy. Number 5 is Helping Hands Pediatric Rehabilitation Services for OT. Number 6 is Irma Cantu Orientation and Mobility. Number 7, Dr. Dubois Psychological Clinic. Number 8, Trinity Educational Services. And number 9, Therapy Connections. And if you have any questions, Ms. Pam Kilkaski is here to answer any questions.
I have a question, sir.
Okay.
Is it time for
Go ahead and question.
Okay, so I noticed that there's what, 8 contracts on and 9 contracts? Is this staff on top of Ms. K's employees?
Yes,
Okay, so like number 1, for example, assessment, intervention, and management. I would like to know what that number 1 does, because that to me sounds like Ms. K's position. Am I off? Am I wrong?
yes, so actually, assessment intervention management, they are a contract company, and what their role is going to be is assist our speech pathologist with assessment. Because of the COVID-19, our assessment staff, the speech paths, were not able to conduct any evaluations or reevaluations. And because of that, we have about 23 assessments that are gonna have to carry over to this coming year. And so we're gonna need to offer them support. And so that's what they're gonna come in and do, is help support them through that process, because they're basically gonna be overloaded with that.
So that cost for number 1, you say that's due to COVID-19?
Yes, ma'am.
So is this something we're gonna automatically renew for a whole year because of COVID?
This is to help with the carryover with that. I mean, because it's basically snowballed, you know.
Well, I would just like to know, Judge Moreno, can I get a cost for all of those expenses?
Well, the thing is it depends on the need, the evaluation, it depends on the hours of the student, or how long it takes for them to evaluate a student. So there's not like a set cost as far as a contract. It's not like, okay, it's gonna be $5,000 for a year.
Like as needed?
It's, right.
So it's like as needed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. K, are all the other contracts, are all those just part of the renewal as an annual renewal for the next school year as well? They're
Okay,
standard?
so, yes, ma'am, the others are annual renewals. All of them are annual renewals with the exception, I think Trinity was another one that we had last year. I'm not for sure, but, Trinity is another agency that we're working with to assist us with the, overflow from last year. This is for the diagnosticians, again, for the support. They assist with the evaluations. Dr. Dubois is the psychologist that we use every year, but because of the number of evaluations that we're having to carry over, they're gonna assist us with that support also.
And that is that gonna be as needed as well?
Well, that's gonna be to provide that additional support that was due to the pandemic for that carryover.
Okay.
If Dr. Dubois doesn't have the capability in his practice to, take over those 29 plus referrals from last year, that we have. So that's where we bring in that extra support, because we do have to remain compliant, with the state, and so we have to bring in that additional support.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Recommendation?
So trustees, we're recommending that you consider approval of the special ed annual renewals of the following contracts. Again, assessment intervention management, number 2, succeeded software services, number 3, diagnostic services by Maria Garcia, number 4, accelerate contract therapy, physical therapy, and number 5, helping hands pediatric rehabilitation services, OT, and number 6, Irma Cantu orientation and mobility, number 7, Dr. Dubois psychological clinic, and number 8, Trinity educational services, and number 9, therapy connections.
This recommendation from staff that we, consider the approval of special education annual renewal of the following contracts. Number 1, assessment, intervention, and management. Number 2, success software services. Number 3, diagnostic service, Maria Garcia. Number 4, accelerate contract therapy, PT. Number 5, helping hands, pediatric rehabilitation services, OT. Number 6, Irma Cantu orientation and mobility. Number 7, Dr. Du Bois psychological clinic. Number 8, Trinity education services. And number 9, therapy connection. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Corona, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Roldan. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Ms. Garza, that meant
I said aye one time.
aye, yes to oppose or for yes?
Yes, to approve.
Oh, to approve, okay. It is unanimous?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. We go to item number 8, governance, sir? Budget workshop?
On,
No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Letter B?
Letter B, action item, discuss and consider approval of action on changes to CDA locals by resolution concerning the investment policy and investment strategy review.
Trustees, this evening, we'd like for you to consider approval of action on changes to CDA local. This is a annual, required review that is conducted. At this time, according to CDA local, there will be no changes. But if you have any questions for this particular, action item, we do have Ms. Conway, they can answer any questions on that. But this is again annually that we have to, go through this process.
Does this change, anything about how we proceed with investments, Nina, or what exactly is being modified?
No, ma'am, we're not making any change. If you'll remember, last year on page 114, we did make some minor changes.
Okay.
Our, in the middle of the page, liquidity and maturity on page 117 was just 1 year. So we expanded that so that I could purchase, a CD or a treasury up to 4 years from purchase instead of just 1 year. And that's the only change we made last year, so there were no changes needed this year. But you're still required annually to review and approve either no change or a change.
And this is no change.
Recommendation, sir?
At this point, trustees, I recommend that you consider approval of action on changes to CDA local by resolution concerning the investment policy and investment strategy review.
The recommendation from staff that we approve action on changes to CDA local by resolution concerning the investment policy and investment strategy review. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Lopez, is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Corona. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Unanimous?
Needs to be signed today, Nina? Is that what it is?
Excuse me?
The resolution has to be signed today? Tonight?
It can be, there's no hurry.
Okay.
Okay. Go to action, item C. Go ahead, sir.
So trustees, on this would like to discuss and consider approval of Robstown ISD transportation proposal, but at this point, trustees, to clarify, at this point, we're going to reject all bids. And, so, in this case, just to give you some additional information, we had one company that did, provide a bid for this, transportation services. But what we're finding within that one bid, the overall, I'm gonna give you an estimate, was about $637,000 to run the whole services. That's from top to bottom, excluding, the diesel, fuel. But versus right now, what we're at is about $350,000 roughly, that we're spending. So it really doesn't make sense for us to look at that company or the bid at this point, because of that bigger variance. The hopes are, and every district can be a little bit different, that you would basically come up to a wash or close to the amount, especially that first year. But according to our efficiency right now, and compared to their costs that they also pull from all the state reports, it just doesn't make fiscal sense for us to make that change. So what I'm requesting here is the rejection of all bids.
The recommendation of the staff that we reject all bids in regard to the Robstown ISD transportation proposal. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Lopez, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Varona. Any questions?
I have a question. So were all bids close in that amount?
Well, this is the only company that.
Oh, that was the only
bid.
one? Oh,
Yes,
I
what
see.
this allows us to do, ma'am, also in the future is to go out again and
Okay.
to see if we have more companies that end up putting out a bid for it as well.
Right.
But at this point, it just doesn't make the fiscal sense for us
Yeah.
to move forward.
But they provided sufficient information for you to review,
Yes.
so you could see what kind of services they actually.
Yes, I mean, it's a great service, I'll tell you right now, it's from top to bottom, any repairs, once they get the buses up to par, that's it, they take over completely. They provide the mechanic, they provide all services, they, of course, create the routes. Basically, they would, be employing all the employees at that point. They would run as an entity with our school district. But, so it's just one of those things where it just, at this point, it doesn't make fiscal sense for us because of that wide range. That doesn't mean that wouldn't wanna pursue it in the future again, to look to see what else is out there.
Right. And other districts do use it, right, Dr. Martinez?
Yes, there's several districts.
That are that are in this area.
Some are around here, definitely. Mathis is one that I think's having 2 or 3 years. Just right off the bat, I'm gonna go by, based on memory, I know Fremont, I believe they do. I believe Bishop is also, with them, but it just depends on your routes, so every district's gonna be a little bit different on the final amounts.
Right. Okay.
But I would guesstimate that they have about 12 districts.
What I heard about that particular company, was that, they actually, I mentioned to you that they actually, if they're needing bus drivers, because they're all employed by
Yeah.
them, they get a bus driver from another district to go and service in another district. Because they actually do the operation of the whole fleet everywhere.
Yes, and the company's name is All Aboard. So, I mean, they've had, good reviews, but again.
But they were the only ones, and that was a big difference in the fund.
Where were they from, sir?
This one, they're close to San Antonio, but not necessarily in San Antonio. They're that vicinity, in that area.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Unanimous? We go to item, D, discuss and consider approval of Robstown ISD demolition proposal, sir.
At this point, I'd like to have Mr. Rogelio come on in, as well as Mr. Gonzalez to come on in as well. But trustees, what we have is, this afternoon, we did receive several proposals. This is for the demolition of what we have here at Salazar, the demolition of what we would have at the old M&O building, as well as the demolition, the old community center that's close to Seal, that particular building as well. So there'll be 3 locations for the bids that they are provided. The company that did provide the best is Banco, based on the rubric that we utilized. But at this point, I'm gonna have Rogelio come on up and just discuss a little bit about the process that we use for the ranking.
Good evening. Okay, so the ranking that we received was ranked by the facilities committee earlier, and that was based on ranking criteria that was approved by the school district a few years ago, and it's what we advertised. Basically on that one, 50% of the total ranking percentage came from price. There was I can't remember exactly what it was, but 20% was the workload and the time frame that they are suggesting that it would take to complete the demolition. The rest was 5% local use of local forces, another 5% or so of the history of that company working for Robstown ISD, and the rest was references and general information. So based on that ranking that was done, the highest bidder was Banco LLC. Their base proposal was for $159,550. The days to complete is 80 days. And the next one, was South Plains Contracting. Their bid was $172,500 and to complete it in 90 days. The rest were higher. We did receive, 7 bids. I'll list them. It's Banco LLC, South Plains Contracting, American Abatement, KSI Contracting, Rambro, J.R. Ramon, and Camacho.
There were 7 in total?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was Banco from? Where are they based out?
Banco is from Driscoll, Texas. Yes,
And they've been in business for a while, sir?
they've been in business for about 10 years, based on the information that they submitted.
And somebody check references and all?
Yes, I did. I called the references and they were, the questions that I provided was, it was 5. One of them was, how happy were they with the contractor, from 0 to 5, 0 being the least satisfied, 5 being the highest. And the next one was time frame. It was their follow-up response to any warranty items. The next one was the amount of change orders and the price. And there was another one, and I can submit that for you. But they all have 5s, all of them. No one's gonna submit a reference that it's not gonna give them 5s and everything, so it's kind of.
Where did Rambo come in?
So I'll tell you what the prices were from all of them. So Banco was the lowest number, which was $159,550. The next one was South Plains with $172,500. The next one was American Abatement with $268,815.
268. 119?
815.
And which company was that?
American Abatement.
I'm writing them down for one.
The next one is KSI Contracting. That was for $239,523. The next one was Rambro. That was for $755,000. The next one was J.R. Ramon for $322,328.
I'm sorry, didn't hear.
322,328.
And that's, what was that?
J.R. Ramon.
Where are they from?
They were from 120 miles from here, north of San Antonio. Atkins.
You said Camacho was one of them too?
Yeah, Camacho was the last one, and that one was for $277,800.
277,800?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, that's a big variance.
It is a big variance,
On
and
some of them.
for demolition, it's not atypical to see this. You know, typically when we see a building is very, the square foot cost. But on demolition, I really don't know how it is that they do it. Most of these contractors, at least the Banco, South Plains, American Abatement, and Rambro were on site and they walked the site with me after the pre-bid, so they knew what they were bidding. I don't know how they end up doing their numbers at the end, but I did submit a number, preliminary working number to the superintendent that was about $4.70 per square foot. So that total cost should have been around 190 to 220 or so, based on rough estimates. So we are within that number. Yeah, the ones that are way off, I don't know how or why. One thing to note is that we did have the asbestos reports for these 3 buildings, but it's noted on those reports that there might be some asbestos. So what we have going on right now is we have an inspector, the same one that provided the reports, coming tomorrow to take some samples of some items, mostly flooring and ceiling, and hopefully we'll get those results within 3 days or so, and then we'll know if we have to do some abatement. But that's gonna be outside of this contract.
Okay, so that was my question. So if it does come back that we have asbestos, then the cost will be higher?
The cost will be separate from this.
Okay.
Maybe we can do a change order if you already have a contractor on board, or we can get someone else to
What do you estimate more or less?
Boy, it's really hard to tell, because I don't know if there's gonna be mastic on all of the flooring everywhere, or if it's just gonna be, the asbestos that is easily removed.
And not all the demolition companies are equipped to do the.
That is correct. So Banco, I believe, is equipped to do abatement, but if they're not, and they would typically hire out another company to
Okay.
work under them and then just do a markup, or we can just go
We
directly
could
to
go out
it.
again.
And
Is
it
that
would
what you
be,
recommend?
I would recommend, depending on what it is that's there, if it's quite a bit, then it might be worth it to just go out and
Do
just do
both.
the abatement on its own. Just
Okay.
call up a few companies and try to get a bid from all of them.
Okay.
And then see if we have any on the buy board.
So for the abatement, we would have to come back, for the asbestos abatement, we come back.
Well, it depends.
We don't decide tonight on that.
Oh, the asbestos, no, because we don't have a
We don't
price
know.
for that. But it could be, I don't know, it could be $10,000 or it could be a lot more. We don't know
Okay.
exactly. So I think that will be, maybe, it might fall under the superintendent's power to.
Oh,
Yeah.
depending on the amount.
Yes.
Okay.
Depending on, yeah, it's, anything on the.
But that's it. Any questions? If you guys remember, if you know what's getting demolished, it's basically all the old wings at Salazar. Basically everything that is old, that was not built in the 80s, and all of that is still.
Facing Martiano Ortiz, right, that area?
Facing Martiano Ortiz, yes.
And the third building is over here on Fifth Street.
On 508 Fifth Street, that's parent.
Yeah, pretty ball.
The old parent
Yeah.
home.
And in everything that's at the M&O right now.
And
So
everything at the, on Main Street.
Yeah, so the only thing that we're leaving is some trees that are, nice and.
Okay, and what about the, I guess those gas upright?
The gas tanks, fuel tanks, those are gonna stay in the meantime until, the board decides what to do with,
Oh, where to move
Or
them,
we
they
work
can be
it out.
moved?
Oh, yeah.
They're not gonna be moved
upright.
right now.
Yeah, but I'm saying they'll
In the
be, they're
future.
usable.
Yes, yeah, they are. So right now, basically, the only thing that's on the scope of this contract is gonna be for them to relocate the meter, the electrical meter for the pumps, and they're just gonna put it right next to it, in a little building that's to stay, a little shed, and everything else is gonna be demolished.
Did the, old facility, the one that y'all were in before, does that have like a historical landmark thing? Did y'all decide on that, whether we're gonna remove that and not have it
Yes,
demolished?
Dr. Moreno advised us to cut it out, save it up, and, just keep it.
Kinda keep it as a historical thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we gonna keep
And that's
it here, or
not,
we're
my
gonna-
understanding, it's not the original, but this one is all concrete, and you can tell where they wrote in the
I
information.
believe that
Oh.
somebody mentioned we could donate to the historical.
To the museum.
Here in town.
It's definitely worth taking off there, not that we destroyed it.
Right,
Okay.
definitely, of course.
On that note, what we have in the contract is that we're gonna, once we get, what contractor, after the abatement, we're gonna get a contract, I'm gonna give, 10 days to submit all their bonding and stuff. And, in the meantime, we're gonna give the school district, days, maybe 10, 15 days, for you or somebody to go over there, pull out everything they want, and whatever stays is, to the contractor to get rid of.
To get rid of it.
So the school district has the right of salvage for everything and anything until we give the contractor the money to take it.
Okay.
Okay. Recommendation, sir?
Thank you.
I have a question.
Be right with you.
Okay.
Ande.
Okay, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask right now, but I know that we were going out for bid for demolition. But hearing Rogelio giving us the update, do we have a contract with Jeanette for this? Are they doing the project management on this?
We did the drawings.
They did the drawings only.
Yeah, so.
Okay, but we're doing demolition.
Yes.
We're getting prices on demolition. I'm not sure where Rogelio is, why he's giving us the quotes. Are we paying Jeanette the money to help us with demolition?
No, they only drew the
specs.
specs.
But
And then we need and got the
Right,
bids
but
for
they-
us. They did pay for that.
No, I understand that we're getting drawings from them. I'm asking about the demolition.
No.
Are we paying Jeanette for some kind of project management for the demolition? And if so, I would like to know how much that is, because I don't remember us talking about that.
No, I think she's misunderstanding. So there is no drawings for after demolition, but in order for you to go out to bid and for contractors to be able to give you a price, they need to have plans and specs. They need to know exactly to what extent they're gonna demolish. So we basically did drawings, telling them, what to demolish, how to demolish it, how to get rid of it, and all of the front end specs for the school district to know how they were gonna do the bidding and how you're gonna get the bids. So that's very typical of us, when we're doing a building project, and I know that we haven't had a demolition project in a while in Robstown, but it's basically the same thing. You do have to provide plans, and you do have to provide specs.
So does the school district not have plans already?
I think they do have some plans, but you need to put a package together, and I think because of your I don't know what they're called, regulations on your board, I think if it goes over a certain amount, you have to have an architect to approve them and for you to be able to advertise it, which is what we did. It's a package. I think I have a copy already for Leroy, or I can send another one to you. It's basically there's some sheets with a bunch of notes telling them, you know, what to do with the gas lines, what to do with the electrical lines, and there's gonna be a little bit of architectural patch-up work where those canopies are gonna come down, and there's also some structural members that need to come out and they need to be attached. So it does.
Isn't that information given with the original drawings that the school district buys whenever it's built?
Well, you don't have anything for the M&O building, and you don't have any drawings for any of the buildings that we're demolishing because they're really old. The only thing that I was given to work from was a drawing from the other side of the school that I ended up not using. But,
okay, well, I do understand about the whole needing to know what's where and how to properly remove it, but I would still like to know the cost of Jeanette for this because from history, it's usually no less than like 30,000, 50,000, and that's a lot of money in my opinion to add on top of the demolition service already.
well, the soft cost would be a percentage of the entire cost, and I think the soft cost, which includes if we need to get any permits, which that should be part of the contractor. But to answer your question, our fee, the architectural fee, should be what we have in the contract with the ongoing contract with the school district, which I believe for additions and renovations is 8%. So it will be 8% of $150,000, and that will be broken down into as of right now will be a bidding and negotiations.
We have an ongoing contract with Jeanette. I would love to see that. Can I see that, Dr. Moreno?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I understand where you're coming from, Moreno, but I used to work with demolitions with my old company, and whenever we would build something, all of that information came with the drawing, and it was part of the company's documentation already. So when we had to demolish, we would just pull that package. So I just feel like they were paying for things over and over and over and over and over, and it just doesn't make sense to me.
Those buildings are too old.
Yeah, I think if you were to demolish anything that you have plans or that we have provided plans for that we've done within the past 10, 20 years, then I think that would be the case. If you just get those plans and give them to contractors, I don't know how the procurement process would work, but yes, I think that would work. But these buildings were really old. We had to actually go out and measure and draw them.
And I would like to see that ongoing contract, because that doesn't even make sense to me. Ongoing contract, a contract has a date. Contracts, they all have dates. I've never heard of anything that's an ongoing contract.
And Dr. Moreno, just to make it clear, you did reach out to Janak and Associates to give us plans when we were talking about the M&O facility, and that's when your idea was to bring it to the where the Salazar building is, right? And that's where this whole demolition conversation came up.
Yeah.
And then also because we had some suggestions from some of us at that board meeting, it was at a board meeting, that we wanted to see what it would cost also to do the work potentially at the old facility where we need to demolish it in order to be able to know what we can do there.
Yeah, correct. I mean, in order for us to even look at any type of a new site or anything for a new garage, or again, which would be a garage as well as the drive, then we have to look at the demolition. I mean, as it is, the buildings are dilapidated, and to me, it's more of a safety hazard at this point as well, just because we don't know who's going into those buildings and not at this point. I mean,
and then can you also clarify, because I know this, because I had called you and asked you about some of these items on the agenda, that you mentioned that the old PI building, the reason you're asking that to be demolished is because of the insurance.
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So the PI building, this is the one on Fifth Street down by Seal. The reason, trustees, that I'm asking for that one also is because our insurance company, I want to say roughly a little bit over a month ago, they mentioned to us that they could not continue to insure that building. And if we were gonna keep it, then they couldn't insure us as a school district. I've walked that building before too, and it's dilapidated. I mean, you can tell the floor, the ceilings, everything. I mean, it's nothing that we wanna try to salvage.
Plus the foundation, right?
The foundation, yes, it's all.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Do we
We
the
said which one, wait
recommendation?
a minute, what's your recommendation?
I think Lori asked a question, so we don't have a motion yet.
Yeah.
Lori asked a question.
No,
and
I don't have a question.
Yeah,
No, I don't have a question.
yeah, so that was answering her question, Oscar. We still need to go to his recommendation on the
Well,
bills.
we had it, no, okay. I
Yeah,
understand.
because we didn't have a name as to which one we're gonna
At
use.
this time,
He's gonna
what's
make
your
it.
recommendation on these, sir?
Trustees, at this point, I'm recommending that we consider approval of Robson IC demolition proposal, be, managed and by Bonco LLC. And the amount of $159,550.
Okay. The recommendation from staff that we approve the Robstown ISD demolition proposal for $159,552 Bunko.
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Move by Ms. Winona, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Rodan, any questions? If not,
I have a question. I have a question on that.
go ahead.
So I heard the cost of 159 something thousand, but I also want to know the cost from Jeanette. But I know that we don't have it right now, but I would like to
Okay,
see that whenever we get a final cost.
Let the superintendent, let you have it or email it to you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other question?
No, I mean, and just to clarify, Rogelio, what you just stated was, it would be the 8% of
8%.
whatever bid we approve tonight.
Yeah.
Because tonight we could approve for any bid, but if it's Banco being the recommendation of the superintendent, then that's the bid where the 8% goes to.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm not certain if it's 8%, it's the ongoing rate that we have had with.
Whatever's on the,
Yeah, it might be less, I'm just saying,
Okay.
it could be like 6
I
to
think
8.
we used to be at 6.
but you'll be able to provide it to Dr. Moreno, right? So
Yeah,
we can-
yeah, definitely.
Okay, makes sense.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I have to say this. I don't know why we're paying a percentage of the contract when they're demolishing a property. Why are we paying a percentage of what they're charging us when the drawing's the drawing? It's like the drawing's gonna cost $100 for this contract or that demolition, but it's gonna cost $500 for this other one because of their price. It just doesn't make sense. Are y'all okay with that?
Well,
Paying a percentage based on the cost instead of for the building?
but this has been a contract that has been going on for years now.
This is an approved agreement, a contract agreement,
between
it's
the
a state approved
architect and
contract, right?
the board.
Is it the
That
A?
goes back to the contract, right?
Yeah.
The ongoing contract?
We're under a contract, it looks like, and so we gotta abide by that contract for now. If there's an issue with the contract that you have, we may have to look at that at another time. It looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
let me, can I just?
That's
Yeah,
what
sure.
I would like to see.
Okay.
An unlimited contract,
All right.
yes, I would like to see the contract.
Typically, for this project, this is not just for Robstown, this is for every school district. So if you're gonna have a project that's more than, a certain amount, I think it's 50,000 for this school district, then you have to have a professional services. Professional services is not something that you can, I don't wanna say bargain, but it's not something that you can take professionals and see who's gonna charge you more or not. It's based on qualifications. We have had, good qualifications and a good record for working in Robstown. And our numbers are the same as any other architect's numbers will be in this town. And it will be the same as what you will get with someone else, and you will still have to go through the same percentage with another architect. So it's not something that's out of the ordinary. It's not something that we're doing extra when
Because it's a standard contract. You were saying it's the AIA contract.
And it's something that we have to abide by to do the demolition. It's not something that we can just send somebody out there to do demolition without blindly, basically.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Any other question? Remember, sir, that you
Yes.
send Lori that information that she needs.
I'll follow up with this.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous? We go to governance, sir?
Trustees, today what we'd like to do is just provide you for a brief on the budget workshop. And again, today what we're going to do is give you two scenarios and have Ms. Conway be able to explain that. Any questions you may have today. But again, the intent is not to go through a whole budget workshop today, but it's just to plant the seed with you. And that way we can continue on June the 25th at 4 o'clock. All right, Nina? And trustees, do you mind, sir?
Do you want me there, or do you want me to try to do it from here?
She can come in
Yeah, you can come in here. You can come over. There, you'll have two documents. One that, assuming nothing at the top, it says draft number 1, and it says option 1, 2%. And there's another one that says option 2, 1%, and then the 400. So you'll have these two documents as well as this document. Yes, sir.
El mismo se yo ahorita ya
First, I'm gonna hand out a cheat sheet, because this is a lot of information, and
You
y'all
gave us
don't.
2 already, is that different?
Yes, no, I'm gonna go through that very slowly, but this is something that y'all can review at your leisure, but because you don't know what the codes are,
Yes, we
here's a
don't.
cheat sheet.
Thank you. We always get a cheat sheet, but we didn't have it to look at it this weekend.
Thank you.
Well, and y'all know functions, because as you may remember, the board is required to approve the budget at the function level, that's this section right here, and you also amend the budget at the function level. But the other ones, and I do it just quick and easy, so I categorize
Did we
them
lose
for you.
Lori?
Ms. Garza?
You have my picture on there, should I go cut mine off? That's
I think they're minimized at the, oh no, that's us at the bottom.
Richard?
I don't see her up there.
Like, do we lose everybody else?
It's just me, my office.
Lori, not up there?
Yes, she is.
I can go turn on.
Okay, sorry. So, like I said, I categorized these for you. 6,100 generically is payroll. The next category are 6,200s is contract services. 6,300 series is generally supplies. 64 is insurance, that's all of our property insurance and travel, board travel, teacher travel, student travel. The 6,500 is debt, and 6,600 is capital outlay. Anytime we buy something that's over $5,000, we have to put it in the 6,600. Did you take mine? That mine? Yours?
That was here.
Okay, good. Okay, so to this document, it's 10 pages and it's 2 different scenarios. There's an option 1 and an option 2. I'm gonna go through option 1 in great detail because option 2 just has a few little changes. So option 1, we want you to consider a 2% of midpoint and a $250 December incentive. So at the very top is your revenue, and we're comparing next year's proposed to last year, or to current year's approved. So we're looking at dollar for dollar. This 1920 is what y'all approved last August, compared to, right now it's just projected budget for 2021. Our values went up a little bit and our tax rate had to go down. We're right now at a 106.83. We have to drop the tax rate to 105.47. That's required by law in House Bill 3. So when I did the calculations, we got about a almost 3% value increase. So it increased our property tax by about $125,000 over the original budget, the current budget. The rest of the revenue dollars didn't change much. That's your local, that's your 5,700 just local revenue. The next section is your state funding. As you can see, we're gonna increase by about $834,000, assuming that our ADA comes in at $2390, which is what it currently is this year. I'm not adding kids, I'm not subtracting kids, I'm hoping for just flat. The state, however, has, at almost every podcast, reminded us to be very conservative because they don't even know how they're going to calculate ADA if we have another pandemic, which we hope not. TRS on behalf is just a wash, it's a revenue and an expense. The next item, if you'll remember, in the current year, we added $440,000 of state revenue because we did a property value audit, went back to 2015 and 2017 values, made some changes there, and that generated additional money. So that, we're not going to see that next year. Then the next section is, you'll see a little bit later that special ed had an increase, but I've also got new revenue for that. Our SHARS revenue, we think is going to increase by about $200,000. So all in all, our revenue projection is going to be up $1.3 million. The next section is salaries, and I just went straight across. Current year, our salaries are $19,600. I took that straight across because that's your base. And then we're going to have add-ons to that. And the next,
What page are you on, Lawson?
I'm sorry, page 1 still.
We're under estimated expenditures, correct?
Yes, sir. I can go back, ma'am, if you need
No,
to.
that's fine.
So just assuming nothing, under estimated expenditures, that's a bold print, we're in that little section now.
Okay, that's fine.
So again, payroll, I just stayed the same amount from last year, and then we're gonna add new payroll units, or we're gonna add salary increases. The $1.7 million is the same as the $1.7 million up top. That's TRS on behalf. The state pays our TRS, and we have to show it as revenue. And then you'll see the section, Schedule A is gonna show.
Pardon me, why do we have to show it?
The state requires it.
It's just a requirement from the,
If it's a federal employee, the feds pay it, so I charge that federal program 7%.
okay.
But if I'm a state employee, I'm paid out of regular 199, the state pays my TRS on the district's behalf.
Okay.
So we have to show that expense at $1.7 million and a revenue from the state. We really don't exchange any money.
Is that everybody that with TRS or?
Everybody with TRS, yes, sir.
I got you.
Okay, so the next two items we're gonna go into quite detail with. So on page 2, again, we're hoping for a 2% of midpoint. That means a maintenance and transportation person that's on level 5, regardless if he's got 0 years of experience or 50 years, he's gonna get the same amount. Everybody in that pay grade is gonna get a midpoint. So if they really are at 15 years, they're really gonna get a 2%. If they're at 0, they're gonna get more than a 2%, and if they're at 50, they're gonna get less. But everybody gets the exact same dollar amount. We pretty much balanced everything out last year, so now it's gonna be easier for payroll to calculate. So, if we do a 2% for teachers, every teacher would get $1,025 increase. And it would cost the district $175,000. However, we've got a lot of federal employees, so local doesn't pay that, so $7,175. Can I take this off?
Yes.
Thank you. I can't breathe in this. 7175 is probably mostly Title I. So that means local is gonna only have 167,930 of that 175. A 2% for clerical is about $64,000. A 2% for admin is almost $40,000. Superintendent, administrative support, that's your OT, PTs, I can't think of anyone else. A lot of your directors, not executive directors, but regular directors, is almost $60,000, and then maintenance and transportation, 2% would be about $38,400. The next section, because a lot of these were hired during 1920, they weren't in that original budget, so I've itemized every single additional unit. So real quick, 2 admin teachers, consumer science, theater arts teacher, math interventionist, all those are current new positions this year. If it doesn't have 1920, that's a proposed new position for next year. Like teacher GT, that's a proposed new position. It's gonna cost about $56,000. That's assuming a baby teacher is 0 plus all of their benefits. Technology specialist is about $63,000 we're estimating, but we are hoping that IMA can pay for it. Instructional materials allotment. So that won't hit local funds. That's gonna be paid out of another fund. And then we need a 4th grade teacher at Ortiz and a PPCD teacher at San Pedro. The next section is support. The first 3 are current, we've already received these, it's actually 3 bus drivers, a mechanic helper, and an HVAC assistant. They're in the current budget. And then we're hoping to add a security guard 210 days for an additional $28,000. All in all, it would cost $1.3 million for these new positions and 2% midpoint raise, of which almost 100 is coming from other funds, so it costs locally $1.2 million.
And trustees, just to clarify all these positions, so the newest ones as far as the direction of our school district, when you go back up to additional personnel, the AVID, remember that's for junior high and high school, okay, so that was a big one. Theater arts was something we didn't have. That was something that we had added this year as far as new. The proposed GT teacher, that's to get us back to our old GT program, the way it used to be run, where we actually have pull-out. This year we'd like to start off at least with 1 teacher versus the 2 that we originally thought of. And the technology specialist, this is instructional technology. So this particular position is especially now that we're going through distance learning, you actually have someone who's actually there coaching teachers, like our reading specialist that we have, you have somebody through the technology lens. That's a vital one, but that one should be able to look at it for our IMA funds. Everything else you see there, it's because of additional growth that we have. So for example, consumer science teacher is because there's a need. 1st grade teacher, 2nd grade teacher is because of numbers of students. So all of those are pretty much just required based on numbers of kids. It's just those 4 that I noted, the 2 for the AVID, the theater arts for last year, and proposed for next year GT and technology specialist.
Any questions?
Sounds good.
Okay, the next section, section B, the first area is our campuses. And your last page is basically how we allocate funds to each campus. It's by formula, it's by student, how many special ed kids do they have, it's a dollar amount rate, and then they take that allocation to their site-based team and decide exactly how they're going to split it within all of their funds. So we can't touch anything with the campuses. Under that, the campuses under elementary schools in bold is special request. The band has asked for a trailer, so we're hoping that maybe we can partner with the Booster Club and only have to pay for half of the trailer. So that'd be a cost of about $15,000.
That would actually be more, because the trailer alone was about 40,000, so that would have to be adjusted.
Okay.
If that were the case.
Okay. Band replacement, he identified about $106,000 of new instruments that he needs to replace old instruments. So we're hoping to start a replacement cost. So every year adding $25,000 to his account so that every year he can buy new instruments so that we don't have this big outlay in 1 year. Yes, sir?
What instruments is he buying?
Instruments.
Which ones?
There was a B flat clarinet, off the top
What,
of my
I
head.
thought
kids
we used to buy our own.
Yep.
When I was in the band, I had to buy my own trumpet. You had to buy your own horn.
That's a good question. I'll find out
I
how
don't-
many kids
I don't know why, I just don't understand why we have to buy them. You know, you wanna join the band, if she wants to play the clarinet or he wants to buy a clarinet, what if the little girl or the young man quits on you? You got a clarinet there that's not being used anymore.
When do we start doing?
When, I don't know, it's been going on, but I'm glad that she brought it up today, because I'm not too satisfied without it all.
Why don't we
You
do-
get to buy your own, right?
Let me do some research. Let me find
Please.
out how many
How far
instruments
back?
we have and how many of our students bring their own.
How far back are we doing this? Can you do that also?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Basically, because they buy like the tubas, don't they buy like the tubas?
I can understand the tubas and the drums
Drum set
and all that stuff.
All the ones on the list were big equipment. I mean,
Yeah.
that
Maybe
big
that's-
bass clarinet,
Yeah, well, that.
I think a xylophone.
Do we have like a rental program that we can do that instead of buying them with some company? That
Like
we
a
can-
lease type?
like a lease type,
We could.
yeah. So
Yeah, we
instead
could
of-
take the whole 106 that he's asking for and lease it, do a lease purchase over 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it kind of sounds like it would be for the big instruments, not
Right.
necessarily for every child's instrument. Because I've always known it that every child has to, I've known parents have to borrow money to do that, that actually the company that you go with finances it for them.
I'll send y'all that email, but I don't think there was a single instrument less than $6,000 on the list.
Okay. So it could be the bigger instruments.
Well, I
Yeah,
still,
we
I
have to
still
buy.
wanna know.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
sir.
it'd be good, just so we can inform, yeah, because like for me too, I had to buy my own trumpet, but I couldn't buy, like, for somebody to buy an oboe, which that's
Yeah.
very specialized, it's very expensive, or like somebody mentioned a tuba or something like that, but we'll get the breakdown, that's good conversation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the next one is a cargo truck. We really need one for, maintenance and transportation. The next line, other school programs, that's JJAEP, that budget hasn't changed in years, 25,000.
What is that?
JJAEP, Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program, kids that,
Get in trouble.
yes, we send them to JJ and we buy a seat for them. So we still have to purchase that seat for them.
Okay.
Is it outside of the district?
Yes.
Is it-
With the county,
Yep.
Nueces County. Summer school, $80,000, that budget hasn't changed in a long time. The next ones, other responsibilities, is this big. Crazy document. And I wanna go over it with you so that when you go home and look at it, you know what you're seeing. But so let's go with the superintendent, and these are the same as these numbers. So 701, your very first one is 701. So all of his accounts are here, and then I bolded for you what his total is.
Okay.
So you can see that number one, he's wanting a $30,136 budget, which is an increase of $85.89. It shows an increase, and this document tells you why he's increasing. So anytime there is an increase, we requested that they put some type of justification. In this case, we're moving a bunch of money from 945 district-wide and trying to get everybody to start budgeting that in their own personal budgets instead of us having a bunch of money in a 945.
Did the board get an increase?
Well, no, actually decreased, $118.
It looks like a decrease to me.
Yes, $118 decrease. That was a good savings.
Yeah,
We're safe, huh?
which, okay.
So the first column again is your working budget. The second column is the difference between the original budget and what you're asking for, and then justification. And then this first section is current year, original budget, that's what y'all approved as the budget. The next revised budget is what it was amended to as of 5/28, and then the activity is through 5/28. So you can see we only have 3 months left, so the money left should hopefully be spent by the end of the year. And then the next 3 is last year, and the 3 after that is the previous. I have 2 more years, but then you wouldn't be able to read this.
Yes.
So I just cut it off at 3 years.
Okay.
And I just wanna point out some, and then we can go into detail next week. The big ticket items like 931, transportation decreased by $119,000. Initially, we put in that we could maybe buy a bus with that, but we needed it to balance the budget. Sped Ed, special ed, 933, looks like she increased a lot, 188,250. But remember, I added revenue from SHARS to offset this. So we moved a lot of people from federal into local so that we could get SHARS reimbursement from it.
She seems to go up every year in large increments, and I don't know if we're getting that many more special ed students. I know we don't have any special ed teachers yet. She keeps asking for more and more money, and I don't see a difference.
Well, but like I said, but this is revenue generating.
Right.
We're getting about 55% for every dollar we spend. We get about 55 cents per dollar.
Okay. Makes sense.
Let's see, what was another big one? Utilities.
Oh.
Utilities actually went down 175,000, but it's because
145?
no, 175. 35 was. I'll get to that. I gave Richard. I gave him that 175. Instead of keeping phones in with other utilities, I split that out. So he's now in charge of all phones because that's a lot of E-rate. He handles all the phone bills. So I just moved that 175 from 937 to Richard's 940. So it looks like his budget went way up, 225,000, but actually 175 of that is from utilities. And the additional 50 is he needs for some projects that he's doing that's gonna be through E-rate. District-wide, again, that's every year you're gonna start seeing that dwindle because we're taking that pot of money and giving Miss Silvas whatever she had been spending out of 941, she's now budgeting in her office, and I'm budgeting mine. So you're gonna see those numbers. Really, the only thing we want in 945 is the incentive pay, insurance, and the big payment we make for the lighting retro, and some UIL expenses. Any questions? Okay, so the second one is gonna be real quick. It is a 1%, the first one is a 2% with $250 incentive. This is knocking that, oh, and I'm sorry, that's a balanced budget. Revenue equals expense. Option 2 is a 1% of midpoint with the $400 incentive. And that's gonna, we're gonna have a little more revenue than expense. That's right in the very center. Fund available for budget, $98,470. That means I've got a little bit more revenue than I do expense. Teacher pay, that 1,025 should be 512. If they only get a 1%, that's about a $512 increase. I'm sorry, I missed it.
But the numbers
Instead
are
of
correct.
$1,025?
The numbers are correct, just not this little
Yeah.
section right here. Yes, ma'am.
So
I'm sorry?
instead of 1,025, it's 500 and,
12, half of that.
okay.
So the only changes would be right there to the 1%, and then on page 8, page 9, the 945 district-wide increased by $75,000 to cover that $400 as opposed to the $250.
Budget was a task, okay, because there was a deficit. I want to say it was about roughly 500,000. Here's the big thing that we have to be very, very careful with in today, and then even start thinking about tomorrow. When I say that, next year, the state again continues to stress that we need to be very conservative. Just today, I mean, I saw Nina, her hair was basically standing up, and part of it is because of news that we started getting from Thursday to Friday, even to today. I'm going to have her explain part of that, but basically there's a certain amount of state funding that comes in, roughly about $1.5 million. Well, we were told basically is that money wasn't going to come to us now. Now it's going to go to the state to make up the difference of what's been going on. So that would have put us even more of a hole. Is how do we figure that out? Where do we get $1.5 million to even try to balance our budget? I'll let her explain a little bit, and next week we'll get into a little bit, definitely a lot deeper.
A lot of the CARES Act is, we get stuff daily. And what I just found out is the state, because of this sales tax, they think reduction, they're not gonna be able to pay all school districts this year. So instead, they're looking at all the Title I schools. We get about $1.5 million in Title I. They're gonna supplant, and I'm gonna call it what it is, they're gonna literally reduce my state funding this year, 1920, and I have to apply for that money, or we have to apply for that money over the next 2 years. And the strings on it are unbelievable. Quarterly reporting, and it's a mess. But the state, we can't supplant federal dollars with state dollars, but that's exactly what they're doing. And if they'd have made it a little easier for us, wait till next year. Don't take away our money this year. Take it away next year when we apply for the money. But no, they're taking it now. So I call a lot of my buddies in the CFOs and business managers, and we've come up with a plan if I think it's going to work. I'm running it by our auditor, because the first thing that Corey Green, he's with TEA, said is whatever you do, run it through your auditor first. What I'm hoping to do is look, we lost 42 instructional days. So I've got 111 teachers and instructional aides that are not special ed, GT, comp ed, any of the big programs. They're regular ed. So I'm taking all of those into this grant, and it's right at $1.4 million. So basically, you're gonna see a big budget amendment next month. I'm gonna reduce our state funding by $1.5 million. I'm gonna reduce our expenses by $1.5 million, moving it all over to a new fund, 266. And I wanna do it now and not wait for the next 2 years. Otherwise, we're gonna have a huge deficit this year.
But are you applying for that grant?
Absolutely, we have to.
Right.
If we don't apply, they're gonna keep the money.
Right, what is that grant called?
ESSER, ESSER. And we thought we were gonna get CRT, which is $250 per free and reduced student. That would have been $600,000, but you only get 75%, so we were thinking $450. We're gonna buy Chromebooks. We're not getting that money. The cities and the counties get that money. If there's anything left, and we're supposed to call them, then we.
Is there other grants that we can apply for that?
this is it.
Is there a guarantee that we're gonna get the grant?
Oh, yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
At least that.
But, I mean, that would, think of how devastating $1.5 million would be on this year's budget.
Oh, definitely.
And then split it over the next 2 years.
Yeah, of course.
It's a timing thing. I mean, we're gonna get the money, but I'd rather apply for it now, show that, because it's definitely COVID related. Those 42 days, we paid those teachers and those instructional aides, so I think that's gonna be permissible. Any questions?
Do we get any kind of assistance with the computers if we're buying tablets or laptops?
That's what we thought the CRT money would be about. FEMA's already said they're not gonna pay for that. FEMA's pretty much not gonna pay for anything now. We thought they would pay for hand sanitizer and all that. All FEMA's paying for now is facility, sanitation. That's it. Well, that's not that much. It's not even worth all the red tape to apply.
Hand sanitizer than cleaning these buildings.
And then you
I
drop
mean,
on your.
let's be real, look around.
Drop on your wooden floor, won't come out.
I was just wondering if like.
Plain kitchen,
Google, if we're buying
manchado
phones,
blanca.
do they have any kind of programs?
Le puse
in,
la guama.
you know, within their own organizations that.
But everybody wants it.
I heard that, but if they have.
Yeah, right now, trustees, what we have, and that's where, again, and that's not even budgeted here, but like when you really start thinking about a priority for our school district to operate as efficiently as possible next year, and even thinking about what it looks like. And like today, I'm gonna present a calendar to all of you, and that's just a calendar that we wanna project to show y'all at that point, and then hopefully you'll be able to adopt that next week. But we still have to think about what the school day looks like. So here, imagine this. This is a regular classroom. Imagine right now we have 25 kids that normally sit in here. What the regulations is that you can't have kids sitting next to each other. They have to be 6 feet apart. So on average, you're looking at about 11 to 12 kids per classroom. But we're still functioning a regular school day. So the next phase after we adopt the calendar, we're not going to wait till then, of course, but the calendar is one thing, but part B is, what does our school day look like? What does it look like when someone goes to school? Am I only going to go Monday and Tuesdays? And then the next group, Wednesdays and Thursdays? And Friday's an intervention, or is that a cleanup day to disinfect the schools? Or is it an AM and PM? I go half a day and then half a day? That's the reality of what we're dealing with in all of our schools. So when I'm not in school physically, what am I doing? I have to ensure that I represent all of us, that they have at least the technology access. So for right now, we have total 1,585 technology devices that we have access to. And that's even with what the principals right now taking their funding, taking their funding that they had left over and buying more devices. I think we've ordered an additional 750 devices. Now, we still need, in order to meet our projected enrollment of 2,749 students, we still need about 1,284 more devices. Majority, of course, would be Chromebooks, but like the babies, the pre-K and kinder, they may still utilize like the iPads there. But when I'm now in 3rd grade and I'm at home, I'm not facing face-to-face with a teacher, and if my family can't afford a device, then what we're trying to do is be proactive and try to say, here's a device for you. What we cannot afford to continue going from here on out is like the hotspots. Hotspots, we have about 250 that we're able to bring into the school district. Right now it's a great deal because we got 2 months free, but guess how much that first bill is going to come out to be? $8,000 to $9,000.
Per month?
Yes, ma'am, for about 250 devices. That's why we can't continue to rely on that. That's going to be what we're going to be able to do in the long run. And we're all struggling with this across all the state of Texas and the nation. Part of our strategy, again, to at least help to offset some of that is that Richard's already outfitting or getting the pricing for the outfitting all the schools. Remember like we did the high school in the Hanny Martin, where the antenna's outside in the parking lot, and it could go out a good range, but then we got to think about the filtration of that for safety wise. But it could have, Richard, did you say up to a mile? A radius about up to a mile, but again, that helps the more immediate families, but that doesn't guarantee. But it could help us out narrow it down. One of the things that we're gonna do is we're actually gonna survey our families to kind of get a better sense of who has a device and not, also accessibility and not, who's around the area, to help try to offset some of that, because that will probably invest about $20,000 roughly to get the rest of the schools done, to create a grid. But to say that we're gonna be able to support $9,000 every month, there's just no way we'd be able to survive with that. So, when you look at that, trustees, roughly, when we start really thinking about the monies that we have available to work with, you're looking at a rough estimate for about 1,284 devices more, rough estimate of about another $288,000. To say that in Robstown ISD, we're a one-to-one device. That means every student has access to a device. We're not there yet. I mean, normally that takes you 2 to 3 years to get to that point. But aggressively, we also have to think about in our budgeting is how much more can we tackle out of that group? Because then we'll prioritize, you know, our grade levels and access. Now, again, some of our kids do have devices, and that's part of what we'll narrow down to. But the worst case scenario, that's about what we're looking at. And again, we're not alone. Every single district is going through this.
So what is the state
And no
recommending
help
on
from the
that?
state, huh?
We're all in the same boat. Yeah, I mean, we all have different levels of inventory. So the reality when we start taking inventory this year, and when we have Driscoll, I'm giving you a rough number, 40 devices that they can lend out, or Lot speaks about 40 devices when you have over 300 kids. That's where you see the imbalance. So right now we're catching up is what we're doing. Now Chromebooks is a great way to look at it. I mean, they're low cost and durable. You know, we'll get a good 3 to 5 years out of them. But the thing is, again, it's still an expense. So we have to be very strategic, very intentional in what we're doing as far as our funding and our monies to get to our students. But that's got to be a major priority for us as we start moving forward. And anything that we start adjusting in the budgets, knowing that that's a focal point for us. But it's a reality. So roughly about 1,200 devices that we need right now to be able to ensure that. There's a lot of unknowns, and it is scary to look at. You know, we're gonna, at this point in the calendar we'll present to you, we're even looking at starting a week earlier than we were going to. August 13th was gonna be the first day of school. Now it's August the 3rd, which will be part of that calendar. Now the state is giving us we had 175 instructional days. We're gonna be up to 180 plus. So now we get state funding for pre-K to 5 for half a day, additional funding in part of this plan. But again, it's just something that we all have to tackle, trustees, and be student-centered as much as possible in making our decisions as we start moving forward. But this is just a projection, and I can talk more in detail next week.
Okay.
Any other questions on the budget workshop?
Do we need to approve this now, or?
No, ma'am, this is just to
Information.
just to plant the seed for next week.
Okay.
All right?
Sure. We go to item number 9. Instruction item, sir?
Trustees, under instruction, we would like to discuss and consider approval of memorandums of understanding, or MOUs, with the University of Texas for dual enrollment. These are all your dual credit classes that we have with the University of Texas, and this is year to year.
It is recommendation from staff that we approve the memorandums of understanding with the University of Texas dual enrollment. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Lopez, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Arona. Any questions?
I have a question. How much money are we talking about as far as paying out on this project?
On the dual enrollment?
Yes.
I don't have that number, ma'am, but I can get that.
And also, how many students do we have?
I'll get that as well.
So can we table this before we approve it, or it has to be?
It's a renewal piece that we need to continue to move forward, but I could get you the details.
Only because I'm just kind of wondering how many we have, and is it
Feasible?
well, no, not feasible. Are we benefiting from this, and how many students are actually using it and actually getting the certification that they are profiting by this?
Those are
Dr.
numbers that.
Moreno? I'm sorry, excuse me, Dr. Moreno, may I?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Moreno, this, the memorandums of understanding with the University of Texas provide courses to our students. And the benefit by partnering with the University of Texas with these courses is that students are able to earn college credit without having to be TSI compliant. Okay, and so what that means is that they allow our students to take dual enrollment courses and where, you know, where other, for example, Del Mar and the University of, you know, local universities require TSI grades and to be at a certain level at the TSI, this particular program allows our students to take those dual credit courses and be TSI compliant. These are year-long courses. There are three programs that we partner with. It's the Chem Bridge, the Math Bridge, and the Writing Bridge. These are year-long courses with the University of Texas, and each course or each student that takes the course, the cost is $300 per student. Again, it is a year-long course where, for example, in Del Mar, if they were to take a course that's a semester course, Del Mar charges us $99 per hour. So they take one course and it's $300 with Del Mar, but it's a semester course. These courses are year-long and it's $300 per student. Again, the other benefit that it allows us to earn CCMR points for accountability. The CCMR points that we can earn with students that take these courses are, of course, any student that earns 9 dual credit hours gives us a CCMR point for accountability. And any student that earns a dual credit in the math or English language arts or, you know, like the Writing Bridge, they give us, they potentially can earn us a CCMR point for accountability. So I know that I understand, you know, the questions of how many are taking them and then, you know, how many are actually passing the courses. I can tell you that right off the bat, just based on the numbers, and I don't have every single number in front of me, but I can tell you that we have success, you know, the success rate is pretty high in the Chem Bridge and the Math Bridge. Again, I can share those numbers with Dr. Moreno and we can bring them to you at the next board meeting. Where I think there's a little bit of a struggle is in the Writing Bridge, but overall, we know that the ELAR courses for students tend to be a little more difficult than other courses. Definitely, I'll give those numbers to Dr. Moreno for the next board meeting. We always want to be fiscally responsible with taxpayers' money, definitely, and so we always look at those benefits and outweighing any of the cons. But there are a lot of benefits to these partnerships with T.
And Dr. Moreno, don't misunderstand me. I'm, of course, all for this program, but I just want to know the benefits. I know that are great, and we acquire a lot of credits for our school. I understand that, but I want to know how many kids are actually taking and how many kids are passing. Sure. Just to get a point as to is it beneficial for us to do this? Yeah. And it looks like it's when Ms. Ceballos explained it, she explained very well, and I understand it. I understand the whole program from when the onset, but I just wanted to know from when we started, from now, where we are.
Yes, and I think it's good for a good conversation, and I think it's also good for the board to know is that, you know, every year it's going to get tighter, and a part of being get tighter as far as the success rate for kids is that we also become a little bit more selective and criteria based. Yeah. The reason I say that is because, again, when the early college high school began, and again, it's a great model, but what you don't want to do is just have everyone necessarily. You have a choice, but the thing is, am I going to put forth the effort? Right. The effort's going to be a big piece because when you're taking these classes, this is a college and a university level course.
And that's why I'm going with this, because we do have, of course, we're a college school, early college school, and we are wanting to do that and provide that service. but I just wanna make sure that, the kids that are taking it are benefit from it and they're actually completing.
Well, and here's where I'm going with this is that, so every year, what you're gonna see is it getting tighter and tighter, and what I mean by that is smaller and smaller. You wanna get a group of students who are definitely gonna be committed to follow through the process, not only for something like this, but also through Del Mar. And right now, the number that we're looking at, the range was 70 kids. And from there, trustees, it made that we go even tighter. Because every year, because what you want is that the kids are gonna be committed to following through and doing what they need to do. Because it's a big benefit, but at the same time, as a school district, you can't afford to continue the tuition free. And I'm just over exaggerating, with 100 kids, and not everybody's putting forth the effort to do that. Right?
And that's one problem.
Yeah, because to provide this to them, they have to also want to go to college, to a university. It's not just, junior college, this is university credits.
So those are some of the things we're fine tuning every year, like I said, this year's even tighter down to even around the 70
Right, and
mark.
anybody can do the Del Mar and the other junior college that would provide service for them, but when you get to the university level, that's at a higher, I guess, qualifications that you have to meet.
Even right now, last week, we started working with our high school as well as trying to finish up the master schedule. And this week, they started again this morning, and they're starting to identify where some of the gaps are with some of the kids that may or may not need to take some of these courses. Okay?
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Unanimous? We go to B, action item, sir.
Trustees, at this point, this is a yearly item as well, is to discuss and consider approval of advanced classes identification that fall within the no pass, no play exemption for the 2020-2021 school year. And again, if you look at page 180, will list all of the dual credit classes where this comes in. So what this means, trustees, is that they're taking any of these classes that are listed here and they don't pass, that means that they don't fall within the no pass, no play. I would suggest, and I'll be discussing this with our team here, and in the future be able to come to you as a trustees, but I think we need to look at some policies and procedures to even tighten up some of the expectations there. Because what you don't want to do is a student taking 5 classes and say, you know what, it doesn't matter, I'm not gonna pass them and I can still get to play. We have to start tightening up on those particular areas, okay?
Lori, can you mute your phone, please?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Recommendations, sir?
My recommendation is consider approval of advanced classes, identification of no pass, no play, exemption for the 2020-2021 school year.
The recommendation from staff that we approve of advanced classes identification, no pass, no play, exemptions for the 2020-2021 school year. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Lopez, is there a second? Second by Ms. Roldan, any questions? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Unanimous? We go to C, sir.
Trustees, on this next one, it's discuss and consider approval of the following COVID-19 waivers. Again, these are waivers that the state puts out, so we take advantage as a school district for the benefit of our students. Alternate district selected kindergarten reading instruments. So the state wanted to use a different one, I believe it's called KIA. But now with this waiver, we'll be able to continue using TPRI, which is what we normally use. The second one is parent notice requirements for students at risk of failure. Again, this is because there was no STAR assessment this year. So a letter is normally sent out, but this would allow us then to bring a delayed notice requirement until the next coming school year versus now. So that's, again, those are waivers that the state puts out for us to review.
Your recommendation, sir?
To consider approval of the following COVID-19 waivers.
There's a recommendation from staff to consider approval of the following COVID-19 waiver. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Lopez, is there a second?
No second.
Second by Ms. Roldan, any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous? We go to D, sir, action item.
D, and again, this is for discussion, trustees, revisions of the 2021 calendar. I'm gonna go ahead and show that to y'all.
La chaqueta negra de King
And-
Flower.
Do you want us to
Did
send
Lori
it,
get-
for it to send
Yeah.
out there?
You want me to send it to her?
Ms. Garza, we're gonna send you a copy of the calendar,
Sure.
just for your review.
Okay,
It's coming-
thank you.
It's coming from me, Lori.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, trustees, so this is again a draft of a calendar. Now, many of you probably heard something about a year-round calendar. There's been discussion of that. That's what the commissioner also refers to as an intersessional calendar. But that may look different in every single school district. This is not your traditional year-round, but the main focus on that is this, is that the commissioner was recommending for our school districts to look at intercession periods within the school year. So if you look at this calendar, the one thing that stands out to you is the yellow. The yellow is an additional intercession. So in September, after the first 6 weeks, that whole week would be used for additional intervention for kids that are identified that need some extra support. That's an additional time. Notice in February, that yellow is an additional time, intercession. That means it's not, it's open to all students, but those that are identified that need more intervention would be provided that intervention during that time. Now, also, what that gives us is a leverage of pre-K to 5, we get additional funding this year as long as we exceed 180, which we will be exceeding the 180 mark. So we'll get half-day funding for students there. Notice in the summer, June, all that yellow, there as well. So I'm gonna give you just a rough estimate. Diana, maybe you could correct me, or actually let me know, Diana, how many total days would we have that would qualify for the intercession? Check your mute, you're muted. Diana, you're on mute. Well, come on over then.
Yeah,
Come on over.
come on over.
She can't hear you.
Lorena, can you tell her to come on over?
Yes, sir, I will. I'll walk over there.
So let me point out a couple of areas, trustees. So look at August of 2020. We were going to start on August the 13th according to the old calendar. Now look where we'd be starting, August the 3rd. So we'd be starting earlier at this point in order to be able to give. You notice where we had that 1 September, that yellow? Notice in February that extra? By starting earlier, we get to salvage some of those days there as intercession days. And again, that ties into extra support for our kids, as well as extra funding. So this was the first step. We're going to get our calendar committee just to review it and make sure we're not missing something on it. This is something I'd like to bring back to the board for final approval pretty quickly by next week at the latest. And in the meantime, we're also planning what does the day look like for our kids. Remember, that's what I was talking about, half a day or certain AB days. Like I might come on Monday, Tuesday, another group might come on Wednesday or Thursdays, and then we look at Friday differently. Because remember, it's half the kids that we have to try to get on. Guess what happens on the buses? You can't have a full bus any longer. So we're having to stagger the start time of the school day, and then for first round of pickups, and then the second round might be 45 minutes to an hour later. So that means that elementary to secondary levels, those are also things that we have to map out.
Plus, we need to make sure, Dr. Moreno, with the spring break, that you're not affecting the kids that go to Del Mar.
Yes, ma'am. And this would allow, the way that the intersections even set up, we wouldn't have that issue with the intersections.
When is the last day of school? Can't see that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Moreno, on the calendar, you'll see this calendar reflects 180 school days total. From our prior calendar that was approved by you, it had 174, I believe. Lorena, was it 174? 175?
175.
Okay. So we've added additional instructional days, which would be 180. And in order for us to receive the additional funding for half-day funding for grades PK to 5, you have to have at least 180 days. So we've increased it, like Dr. Moreno said, we would start earlier. Students would start August the 3rd. And and they would end, their last day of school would be June the 2nd, with a teacher workday on June 3rd and graduation on June 4th. What you have highlighted in yellow is the intercession. Of course, it's for those students that we could target instruction, those that are struggling. And right there, we would receive the additional funding, and you've got 5 in September, 5 in February, and then the 3 weeks in June, which would be 25 days of additional funding, 25 days of additional instruction for our students. And even though we only receive funding for pre-K to 5, we would offer intercession district-wide for all our students. And of course, this is above and beyond for teachers. Teachers would still work 187 days, and teachers would sign up to see if they're wanting to work intercession. And it's just like if they're wanting to work summer school, and like in the days prior, years before intercession, we give everyone an opportunity to work. So that's supplemental pay, it's additional pay for teachers, okay? Because it's not part of their 187 work days.
How do you give intervention for kids like after the first semester? 'Cause you're
Well, we
doing it
felt
right
like we
away in
really
September.
wanted it in September because we haven't seen our students since March, right? So we really want to gauge to see where they're at and how
Okay,
much.
do it early.
Yes, and do something early, right on the offset. And then you can see that on the 11th, that's the end of the first 6 weeks. So that way we would be able to assess students. They come in August 3rd. We have 6 weeks to assess where are they, how much have they lost, and then we can immediately help them starting September 14th and help them that week. And relationship to Del Mar, Del Mar's spring break is March the 8th. So we would be off, so we wouldn't have a conflict of when Del Mar goes on spring break. And we've checked that, so that is the spring break that Del Mar has. Of course, we do have a little note on the right-hand side, the bottom. It says intercession days are for targeted instruction. If the district has to close due to COVID-19, unused intercession days become regular school days. Our plan is that in the event that we have to shut down again, say we start school and by August we have to shut down, we're still going to continue to instruct our students via virtual learning. It would still be a hybrid model because not everyone has devices at home. So we would still do virtual learning. We would still do instructional packets. Our teachers would still be working and providing instruction. So we're still going to assist our students in the event, okay? But in the event that we can't come back at all or something, we would like to make up those days. If it need be, we could use some of those days that we did not use for intercession in the event that we don't use them, and in the event that it's all because it's the unknown. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know. It's very hard to predict what might be forthcoming. So we want to have those days in the calendar so that we can provide additional instruction to our students at the same time in the event that we have to totally shut down and we're able to open again and we weren't able to provide instruction for whatever reason virtually through a hybrid model, then we could also use those days. So here, just trying to be proactive and identify days in the calendar where we could provide instruction to our students. Of course, we still haven't plugged in the minutes. Of course, the calendar still has to, we have to have a minimum of 75,600 minutes. We're looking at our bell schedule to see if we need to adjust the bell schedule. So that's why this is not final, because okay, now we have a calendar, now we have to go plug in minutes. So we'll have to then check our minutes and really take a look at our bell schedule to see if our bell schedule is gonna stay the same. Are we going to have, what type of a schedule are we gonna have for our students? Is it gonna be, you know, half of the students come in the morning, half come in the afternoon, or do some students come on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and do the other students come on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, or, you know, that's all the unknown. So we still have to plug in minutes to see what we think might be best for our students in our district. Many, many variations of calendars statewide. We've checked, we participated in the commissioner's meetings, and he has shared several calendars. throughout the state. They're all very different. There's no requirement, there are suggestions, there's samples out there, but you have, there's just so many different calendars. And you go down the street, you know, Cal Allen has one calendar, TM's looking at another calendar, Orange Grove has another calendar, and none of them are, you know, because districts are setting forth calendars to meet the needs of their students based on what we anticipate that our students have lost, you know, based on our data, based on devices, etc.
So, is that how we're basing our calendar?
Yes, ma'am. That's why we felt we needed to have something at the beginning, after the first 6 weeks, because we haven't seen our students since March. We want to review, assess our students, and provide extra, you know, right away for them. In the event, hopefully we can come in and of course, we also have a survey that we're gonna send out to our parents to see, you know, will they be sending their students back? Will they not? You know, there's some parents that are saying, we're not sending our students back. There's some students, some parents that say, we're ready.
That when they're not sending them back, will we do the distant learning?
Yes, ma'am. We'll still do virtual learning. So we have a survey that will be posted this week for our parents to answer, to give us and to kind of help gauge us as to how many students will be returning and how many students will have to help that they stay at home.
That's part of where the uncertainty is as far as the funding, because that, actually the commissioner is gonna speak on tomorrow, is some of the ideas as far as ADA. Because, okay, let's just say we have that family that says, you know what, absolutely not, I can't send my child to school yet. Then how is that gonna count for us? How are we gonna document it, you know, to get the funding? So those are still a lot of the unknowns.
But
this is step one.
But if they are participating in their virtual learning, then you can count those students, correct?
Right, but how we count it, that's part of what we need to.
This year they allowed us.
Well, yeah, but how we count them, they're still gonna be counted as present, correct?
Well, that's,
You don't know yet.
well, that's part of what we need to discuss with at the state level.
So
Yeah.
what are we calling this calendar?
Well, we put on the top COVID response calendar.
We're not doing, it's not year round, it's not.
No.
It's not a year round.
It's not traditional because we can't do a traditional year round. Now, there's a lot of different models in year round, but not every school district has, like what we do, busing our kids over to the colleges. You know, so for us, this makes more sense because it fits all of our needs for all of our kids.
Is Friday an instructional day? Fridays are still gonna be instructional days? Cause you're talking about
Thus far,
dividing
yes.
some kids with virtual and some kids with physical, you know, coming to.
I don't wanna say that Fridays necessarily because maybe it ends up being a Wednesday. We don't know yet.
They're not sure
That's the
yet.
next phase.
It's really in draft form. It's just really to get the skeleton, and then we'll have to get in there and.
After you do the survey with the parents to see how many kids
We're
we're gonna have, and
Well,
then.
we still, even with or without the survey of the parents, we still have to figure out minutes on the calendar and figure out a schedule. Of course, the parents will tell us whether they're gonna send their students or not, but the calendar still has to be as is or adopted, with revisions, and then we have to ensure that it does meet the 75,600 minutes, regardless if parents are gonna send them or not send them, okay? Now, when the agency has given us some redesign options, and they gave us 3 options. One was optional summer learning, which means you keep the year just like it is, and then all you do is remediate in the summer, like summer school, like we've done now. And some districts are choosing to do that. Just continue the calendar and provide summer school, in other words. And if need be, have some makeup days throughout the year in the event that they shut down, okay? And then they have the intersessional calendar, and which is this, and then you have a full year redesign, which is you rethink the entire school day, you revamp the 6 weeks calendar, you change teacher planning, the student, it's just, yeah. So in our case, we felt that this would be the option that we felt would help our students. So hopefully we'll have more information to you when we come back at the next meeting. By then, we hopefully will have.
The one thing that we need to do though is to finalize, at least to adopt a calendar, that way we can continue in our work.
So do we have to approve this tonight, Judge?
Not tonight.
Not tonight, right?
Tonight's just a.
discussion.
And then, next week.
You'll bring
we
him
also-
up and modify it.
So it's an action item?
Yeah, but just as discussion.
Just to discuss. So when we bring it to you, then we'll have the minutes, then we can tell you, yes, this calendar meets the 75,600 minute, or we can have more minutes, and that's great. Usually every year, our school calendars always go over the 75,000, have always gone over the 75.
And at that time,
75,600.
you'll probably know more or less how the schedule's gonna work for our students?
Not yet.
Not yet, because
We'll have an idea, but, yeah.
We've been asked, what are y'all gonna do? What are you gonna do, you know, so.
So
we
we'll
need to-
survey, but I don't know that we'll have all that for you
So when will we
when the
have that?
calendar is approved. What we are gonna bring to you is a calendar that reflects the required number of minutes.
I get that, but when are we gonna know so we can inform our?
I can't give you a definite date right now. I can tell you that we're working as quickly as we can. That's why we gotta get this part done.
Well,
And
especially,
then that.
we're gonna start on August the 3rd, we've got about
Right.
6 weeks.
And part of what we'll do is, especially even coming right back after the break, is, like, one of the things that I was talking to the team about is for me to hold, like a virtual town hall.
Yeah, that
To where parents can also, come in, or I can give some direction, and then later on ask some questions through a chat. And at least to start that way and have some other forms of communication out. Just because there's, again, a lot of uncertainties, and that's the main thing that parents wanna know is, what's it gonna look like?
Yeah.
And, so the gist of what I told you though, as far as AM, PM, or certain group of kids come on Monday, certain group come on Tuesday, we flip back on Wednesday, Thursday, that type of concept, that's the details that we're gonna have to work out, because we can't have all kids in school.
I know, but are we gonna meet the minutes for each student?
Yeah, because we'll have the distance learning piece of it, but that's why we have so many details that we have to
So
work
when
out.
they're not in class, they're still gonna have to do this Zoom?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
yes, and they'll have assignments, and like, say for example, if they come in on Monday, well, I see you on Monday, so Tuesday you won't be here, but this is what you have to work on, right? And this, yeah,
And
so
then
there's
we'll-
always will be some instruction going on. We have to ensure that there's instruction going on 180 days.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
Are you gonna be working, what's the, program that they have at the Crossroads that's more intense?
The
Great
engineering,
Continuity?
Yeah, are you gonna be working if we have to do more virtual? Cause there was an imbalance on their type of assignments versus what assignments they were getting at the high school. I mean, that was rigorous for them. To complete an assignment, to get credit, they went through a whole longer process versus, in the high school, kids that were doing virtual learning, they were just given so many assignments per week. And then they
They
tested
were
and
at
passed
the
on.
beginning, and then we have to readjust it.
Okay,
We
but I'm saying,
readjusted
are we
first.
looking at doing that early on when they start doing that? Because some of these kids fell behind, fell behind.
There's some things in the
We adjusted it
Edgenuity,
towards the end.
yes, and on Edgenuity, things that we can turn off and turn on, okay? It depends, so we have to take each course individually, okay? But that's additional licenses that we need, because we've got to pay for every single license that we use for Edgenuity. So this has a huge domino effect on many, many pieces, yes.
I just wish that we could have somebody on top of it to make sure that if we have to go into the same process that we were towards the end of this school year, that we justify things for them.
Yeah. And I think we
Modify.
have a better picture because we actually went through it.
Yeah.
So we experienced it and we learned a lot from it. We were able to also meet our IGC requirements through Edgenuity, which we had to adjust in there also. But I think going through these months has really opened our eyes, and we've really learned quite a bit of what we can and cannot do and what we could do to help our students. So yes,
Right.
just know that yes,
Because
we will
one of
definitely
the
look.
things that was very critical, that I heard about was that their grading, a lot of their grades were not kept up, like they weren't applied on time. So, there was a lot of catch up on grading. And so I'm just saying, if that's the same process that we're going through Ingenuity, all that needs to be kind of
The
kept
only thing
up.
that does not get graded, because we don't grade Ingenuity, it grades automatically by itself. So if they're alluding to that, it might have been for Spanish and only Spanish, because Ingenuity does not grade Spanish. Everything else, we cannot grade. Ingenuity grades on its own.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, it was through Ingenuity,
Yeah,
through
so-
their own grading system that got some of the grades backlogged. So,
I'll check on that, that's the first.
I'll send you information because I got wind of it through a parent, so.
Spanish, yes, that was.
Yeah, no, it was not
that's,
Spanish, it was other grades.
Yeah, so we have to get a Spanish teacher to actually be able to grade the Spanish, but we will definitely look at that. Okay. But this at
I'll
least
share
gives
with
you
you
all
that
an idea.
one.
Okay.
This gives you at least an idea of what we're looking at.
Okay.
And then we'll bring forth more information to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lopez.
Mr. Lopez.
And there's no action item on this one, right?
No, ma'am.
We're going into closed session.
You started the other one, made me walk on. Oh, sorry.
You
rolled you.
I saw you there, I didn't wanna.
Making faces.
I didn't see that.
Yes, okay. Mr. Lopez, where are we at? Are we going to take a session again? Closed session?
You just wanna say that that's not an action item, it's just for discussion.
Okay.
D.
On item D, it was just for discussion, there was no action item taken on item D. We go to item 10, closed session. I'd like to entertain a motion that we reconvene to executive session under code 551.071, 551.074, and 551.087 of Texas Government Code. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Lopez, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Mr. Lona, any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Sir? Margarita.
That was to return back.
Yeah, now we go to, we go to open session number 11, action item, sir.
Trustees, at this time, I'd like to request that you take action on taking possible action on resignations, appointments, and terminations.
There's a recommendation says that we take action on resignations, appointments, and terminations that sent to the board. Do we have a motion? Motion by Ms. Roldan, is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Lopez, any questions? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous? Item B.
Trustees, at this point, I'd like to request you take action on recommendation for principal position for Vanessa Perez Peterson to be the new principal at Los Beach Elementary.
There's recommendation from staff that we take action, or take recommendation of the superintendent for the new principal at Los Beach Elementary. Is Vanessa?
Perez Peterson.
Perez Peterson, do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Lopez, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Corona, any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, unanimous?
Aye.
Unanimous. We go to item 12, adjournment. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Lopez, second? Second by Ms. Corona, any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, unanimous. Good night.
That's because we start early. We're gonna